What's up, everybody? Alan here, going to walk you through the basics of the wind reactor setup here in the wind reactor module for foliage render. Okay, so you're probably familiar with the wind setup and foliage at large. There's a noise texture, there's a gust texture. It's shader based, right? When in Rome. So you're used to this from FRDS and FR. This part works exactly the same. So you set your wind speed, you got your turbulence, you got all these properties like you're used to. Okay, cool. So the wind controller sets these shader globals. Okay. Then we have a wind reactor manager. This will be created on the fly, but you may want to create it if you want to fine tune some stuff. So there's a couple settings. One, you've got processing mode, and we'll talk about this more as we go, but you have two ways to run the wind sampling. You can run it as a CPU burst job or on your GPU via compute shader. And that sort of lets you choose where you want the performance price to go, right? So if you have a handful of samplers running at a time because you've carefully set up your scenes, let me go to scene view here just so stuff's moving for you. I know your attention span. I know you'll be distracted. Focus just for like 10 minutes probably. I don't know how long I'm going to talk. Okay, sorry. So if you have a bazillion samplers, then the compute shader is very fast, right? But if you're sort of carefully managing it so that the activation range of your samplers are quite low, you maybe don't need it to be so far, etc. Okay, so that takes care of that business. You can choose, right? For a small number of samplers, CPU probably better. For an outrageous number of samplers, GPU probably better. But now you can choose. The GPU cost of the wind sampling is higher than the GPU cost of culling in FR because FR is a one-way shot, right? Here, we not only need to run the GPU, but then we need to like get some stuff back, right? We got to do a readback, and that's expensive. So there you go. It is async on GPU. So, it's pretty good, all things considered, but it's still kind of heavy. So you got to choose, but I gave you the ability to choose. So if you don't like how it's running, try the other thing. All right, you could still choose your update timing like usual. Not super meaningful for this project, but if you are animating stuff, late updates probably your go-to, right? And then interest transforms. So samplers go in your scene on game objects, they are components. Samplers have an activation range. This is how near an interest transform must be in order for them to turn on. So you definitely want one on your main camera. And that's honestly probably it. But maybe you have multiple cameras. You got a little drone. Maybe you got a map camera that can move around. And so you want it to have a thing so that it turns on wind effects stuff, wind reactors, as it moves around. You're going to have to make the decision that's right for your project, but more than likely, you just need the main camera. And it will hook that up for you automatically if you don't have a wind reactor in one of your scenes somewhere. So in this little test terrain decorator scene, we've got a very simple setup. So I got an audio source here that plays like a little looping wind sound. We got our wind sampler, and then we got our audio wind source reactor. So first we'll look at the sampler. It has 3 reactors because there's particle on here as well. If we go back over here to game view, you see these little dusties. These little dusties are getting powered by the wind. Oh, hang on, I'm just getting ahead of myself. All right, so we've got our couple dust particles hooked up. One is a rotation thing, so it will point the wind or the particle for the dust in the direction of the wind, and then we have the audio source. Okay, so all of these will be updated if this wind sampler is within 3 unity units, right, meters, effectively, of our interest transform, which is our main camera. It's parented, so it always will be. It always will be that. And this is not a terrible setup, but This is for things specifically attached to the camera. Wind is a good one, right? Because you kind of always want that around the player, and then you're just going to modulate based on how windy it is where they're at. Okay. All right. Because the wind value will be sampled at the point you're standing at. So as this moves around the scene, it will be getting different values. Okay. Next, we'll take a look here at a wind reactor. So wind reactors take the sample data and then convert it into some sort of change on another component. In this case, an audio source. I'm not going to go through all the components. Read the docs. Use your brain. We're going to look at 2 because that's what I've got in this example scene. Okay. So first, it needs to know the sampler it's connected to. These things will hook each other up if you do this programmatically, and there's some tools for that. We'll do that in a separate video because otherwise I'll be here forever. I don't want to do that. The minimum intensity, this is how strong the wind must be, right? 0 to whatever. It's not going to turn on. Once it gets to that minimum, then it will activate the thing, okay? So in the case of like the particle system, this is kind of like the only setting that's there right now. Because that could potentially be very complicated. I didn't want to do that day one. I want you guys to tell me what you care about, and then we'll add those features. But for now, it will just turn particles on and off. So if you're like, hey, I want to do more leaves when it's super windy, not just when it's a little windy, well, then add a second particle system with a higher threshold that puts more leaves out. It's not like you got options. You can get there. Okay. Speed. Speed is the rate at which this audio source will gain volume or pitch, because those are the 2 things we affect down here, right? As the minimum wind volume is met, okay? So once it gets to 1, then it will start to climb, and it will climb at this rate, 0.03. So kind of slow, because you don't want it to be too sudden. And then if you want it to return to the original sound, or original volume, which for us would be 0, then you give it a return speed. So you can have those things, you can have it like go up slow and then down really fast, or up really fast and then down really slow. There's different use cases for all of these depending on like the materials you're operating on or whatever. You could think of boat sails or whatever, right? Like you want that to turn off pretty fast because that thing would have a lot of gravity to it. Okay. So in this case, our audio behavior, we're just going to affect the volume, and we're just going to go between a minimum value of 0 and a max value of 0.3. So when it's off, it'll creep back down to 0, and when it's on, it'll creep up to 0.3 because we don't want the wind to be too loud. It's like ambient, right? And then we could affect our pitch similarly. We don't want to do that. But you could have it get a little higher pitched if it gets up at the very tip top, right? You could do that. And you could even set these up as separate audio source reactors, right? Where one is just doing pitch with a different minimum. That would work fine. I wouldn't try to run volume from 2 places. That'll probably fall apart. These things aren't that blendable. But you could have, pitch controlled separately by one and volume controlled separately by another. All right, let's just peek at the dust particle real quick. It's pretty straightforward as well. Here you go. Oh, it's missing its sampler. I think this gets hooked up automatically. But just in case, let's plug them in. Apply all, or the Unity people will get mad at you. I don't know if that's true. I don't think they check anymore. Who knows? I don't know. It's speculation. It's not slander. All right. So in the case of particle system, just turns on. If it's above the minimum, it plays, and when it gets below the minimum, it stops. That's how that works. Same thing over here on rotation. So this will move towards the direction of the wind once it reaches the minimum intensity. I've got it at speed 100 and no axis lock. Okay, so you can use axis lock here to control which axes can be modified by the different transform reactors. So there's a position reactor, there's a rotation reactor, there's a scale reactor. I don't know why you're going to use scale, but it's there. You're welcome. Okay. Speed. I got the speed really high because basically once this thing's on, I just want it pointed in the direction of the wind because I just want the particles to blow in the direction of the wind. The end. But I don't need it to update all the time. That's why I have the same minimum intensity, right? I could put this at 0, so it'd constantly be rotating to whichever way the wind is blowing, but it's only going to turn on at 3. So I'm not going to be crazy. I'm just going to do that. Okay, and I don't need it to return to the original. I just want it to always go up. If you look at the example GIF I've posted and it's in the docs, there's like all the little wind socks that they all turn together. I gotta get all my hands in frame. All of them, all two of them. I just have two hands. If I had more, I'd be faster at getting this thing out. I'm sorry. Okay. So there you go. That's the wind reactor setup. You got the wind reactor manager. You got the wind controller. Those are the pieces that work together. If we push play here, I'm so scared to push this button because you know how demos work. Everything always goes wrong. I've been doing this all day, but I still don't trust it. You'll hear the wind. It's getting louder. It's getting windier. Look, the grass is all bending. It's doing the thing. I think the particles are blowing sideways so we can't see them. Rip in pieces. Maybe it's not windy enough. Oh, there went one. I also made them kind of subtle. Should probably work on that. I'll make this cooler before I ship this thing. Oh, there goes another one. Yeah, they're too close to the camera. They need to be in front a little bit. Oh well. You get the idea. All right, so there you go. This is how to set up your wind reactors. There's a handful of them. Currently in the package, we have Animator Wind Reactor. This allows you to animate animator parameters, exposed parameters, so your bools and floats and triggers and ints. We've got the audio source, which we looked at. Material Wind Reactor, that lets you animate material properties. Very powerful. Particle system, which we've looked at. Position, rotation, scale, they all work about the same. And they do what you expect. Things change size or position or direction. And then we've got our controller and our manager. All right, and as another just quick reminder, you're going to be able to choose where you spend your performance bucks on the GPU or on the CPU. GPU price is pretty high to get in the door, but then if you've got like a bazillion of these, because wind is like wind sampling is really important to your project for whatever reason, you're going to have to budget accordingly and then make it work. Again, async, so not going to be like accurate to the frame currently. It wouldn't be hard to do that though. It might even be like, I think you'd have to override one function if you rolled your own. So should be quite doable. And then CPU burst job, if you just have like a manageable number, I'm not gonna guess what that manageable number is to you, because I'm gonna say like 12, and you're gonna be like, oh, I was thinking 600. I don't know. Benchmark it and let me know. Let us all know in the Discord. Definitely join the Discord. Show us what you're working on. And that will give you a walkthrough here of wind reactors, the manager, the controller, a basic implementation for some common use cases. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.